This is your professor, Chuck Hicks, or Professor Hicks. For those who know me, know the Chuck name. I thought I would drop in today for a quick session on the topic of should African people celebrate Labor Day? Well, when I was a teacher and a professor, I always had a little discussion about these holidays that we celebrate so fervently. And it's important to understand, should African Americans celebrate Labor Day, or should we revel in it and enjoy it because we work so damn hard to become a part of it? All right, so let me just read some stuff off to you about Labor Day and why, and you can make your decision on how labor has been, how labor has treated African people in this country for so many years. And I will say before I get into this, a lot of resistance. So let me read some stuff to you and try not to be, because sometimes I get angry about this stuff. So the question I posed was African Americans and labor unions. And this is what I got. This relationship between African Americans and labor unions have been complicated and have been complicated. Well, it's been a complicated relationship. It's been marked by both exclusion and by leadership. All right, and I'm reading from some stuff, so please forgive me. Early period from the 19th and 20th century. Exclusion. Let's talk about now exclusion. Many trade unions, especially American Federation of Labor, AFL, either barred black workers or segregated them into separate locals. You should know, I'm in the Bronx. There's a school in the Bronx called Samuel Gompers, named after a great labor leader, Samuel Gompers. Well, Samuel Gompers did not allow African people in his unions. He barred African people from participating in his union. It is important to understand that. And why they have to have a school named after him, that's another discussion. All right, let's go. Racial tensions. White workers often feared black workers were used as strike breakers, which employers sometimes encouraged. Yes, many times black workers became strike breakers because the desperateness of trying to earn a dollar and being discriminated at every place and everywhere. Black men became desperate, and yes, some of us became strike breakers. It's not a question of true or good or bad, of morality about this. Despite this, African Americans formed their own association, like the Colored Labor Union, founded by a gentleman by Isaac Myers. The Great Migration from 1916 to 1940. We're talking about how African Americans migrated from the South to the North. Millions of African Americans moved to the North into industrial jobs. Some unions continued to exclude them, but others, like parts of the railroad union and mine workers, began to include members. Black workers were crucial in industries like steel, meat packing, and auto, where union battles were fiercest. The New Deal. The Congress of Industrial Organizations, CIO, was more open to black workers than the FAL. The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, led by Philip Randolph, became the first black-led union recognized by a major union company. It was called the Pullman Porters. Randolph put pressure on FDR to help push through Executive Order 8802 in 1941, banning discrimination in defense industries. Civil rights moved from the 50s to the 60s. Now, I'm going through this pretty fast. Black workers used unions as platform for civil rights. Figures like Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph linked labor rights with civil rights. And the March on Washington was the epitome of that action. The AFL-CIO merged in 1955, and through discrimination persisted, discrimination persisted, black membership and influence grew. And that is because of the effort that we put into anything where you deny us. Now, they're putting in that we fought and we died to become a part of these unions and a part of these institutions, as we've been doing since we were captured and brought to this land. Recent developments: African Americans are now overrepresented in union membership compared to their share of the workforce. Black workers often see unions as a path to better wages, job security, and protection against discrimination. True, very true. Prominent black leaders such as William Blucy, Addie Wyatt, he was a meat packing and church-based leader, and Lee Saunders were some of the leaders who helped us with this. Now, before I end this, I just want to go to one more reading, because I've always, and I'm a teacher, I'm part of UFT, but I've always had this angst with being a part of the UFT. I did not want to be a member when I retired, and briefly, I didn't. And there's several reasons, but more importantly, the reason that affected all African people, the UFT did not want African people in its early years. And I'm going to read from you because I am a little biased. Yes, in its early years, United Federation of Teachers, the UFT, in New York City, like many labor unions at the time, had a strained and often exclusionary relationship with African American educators. The UFT literally fought to keep African people from higher pay, from better job security, and where they wanted to work. They were exclusion tactics that they used to keep African American educators and out of the unions, but once they got in, they marginalized them. Many black teachers, especially those working in Harlem, Bedford-Stuyvesant, and other they criticized them. And here's the reason why: because they weren't fighting against the discriminatory hiring practices that happened at that time that still go on. They opposed community school board control. One of the ways that we were able to gain traction in city politics and government during the 50s, 60s, 70s by joining local community school boards. As a young activist, I did that in my community because that was the way to, or the path to progress in these unions. But the UFT, during the Ocean Hill-Brownville conflict, did not allow African people to become part of the community school board experiment. Albert Shanker should be noted as one of the virulent racists who kept us from being a part of this experience, as they call it. A community control experiment in Brooklyn gave parents and local boards authority to hire and fire teachers. When mostly black community boards dismissed some teachers, many of them white, and you have to, Albert Shanker called a massive strike. Why would black community board members dismiss white teachers? Because they were inherently racist. Albert Shanker called a massive strike. Many African Americans from the community saw the strike as a union protecting white teachers at the expense of black communities. This deepened the split between UFT and black educators. So the black educators responded, led by Jitusi Wusi. I remember this guy, Jitu Wusi, and argued that UFT was hostile to black teachers and black students' needs. They eventually alienated themselves from the union. In summary, the UFT never had a formal policy of barring African Americans, but in practice and leadership, they did. The Ocean Hill-Brownville conflict, it was often worked against the interests of black educators. So we got rid of it. We fought like we have been doing since we got here for a right to have a toehold in the UFT. Now the UFT is replete with our members and members of color in general. But I still do not like the UFT. When I became a teacher back in 1990, African people in general dominated the classroom for the first time in history. By the time I retired in 2016, there were no African Americans in the classrooms anymore, particularly no African American men, no role models for these tough black men in these schools. I thought that was horrible. And we did things, my sons and I, we did things to change that. We went to meetings, we joined organizations to change that. Unfortunately, not much has changed. We still find white women in control of our classrooms. Now, I want to preface my comment because there are great white women teachers. I know a bunch of them. That is not the point. When you go to Scarsdale, you don't see black teachers sitting in front of white students. It should be the same here. We're not talking about excluding them all, but we're talking about we need black people, particularly black men, to be in front of these classrooms, and they have been excluded through the college process, through the media propaganda by telling people there's nothing good about being a teacher. You should know yourself that the demise of the educators in America has been done and completed, and that's why we have a country that is so dumb. This morning I shared with my wife an article, a document showing that 43% of Americans didn't know that chocolate milk, or should I say believe that chocolate milk comes from a chocolate cow. 43 million Americans didn't know the difference. And that is a result of politicians, including Michael Bloomberg, and many of those who, for a whole decade, crushed us as teachers, broke up the schools, transferred teachers, made teachers use a curriculum in the classroom that did not benefit the kids nor us, dummied down a decade full of students with crap like these education standardized education models that kill black and Hispanic kids. I know, I watched them fail in droves by making teachers, forcing teachers to teach a curriculum based on standardized education. Who is standardized in this world? So I couldn't let the holiday go without getting out, because I would do this to my kids every year. Yes, I closed my door and taught them how black and brown people were treated by United Federation of Teachers, the Board of Education in particular, and how it destroyed our community specifically. So remember, while you're out there celebrating, folks, don't forget to keep a balanced outlook. The conscious must grow. Stay alive.